Good. Hi again. So in the previous video, we are still working. In the previous video, we created like the first route, which is right now not connecting to Mongo, but returning the listings. Okay. And you can see that here on my data endpoint. We are working on the general application using like this full three-tier full stack. For the moment, we have kind like the client is done. We have this basic front end, and then we have the route, but we are faking the Mongo part, and also we are not doing anything on the front end with that yet. So what we are going to do now is that we are going to implement the Ajax part, and is the one that actually triggers this execution. So in order for us to do that, remember, very important, that's why I use those names. Here are your routes, this is your backend, and this is your front end. So that has to be done directly from the front end. Remember, we have this index HTML, which is loading our JavaScript for the front end. I call it front end for that. And then in there, I can go and create my typical module, something like this. I like doing that. So I create a public object, and that's what I returned in here. We can call that listings if you want. And then basically I can go and just call listings in there, um, my listings or whatever. Okay. Now I can go and start creating like a basic thing in here that says like refresh or yeah, refresh listings. And this is going to be, let's go and start with that. So I'm going to start with a function. Okay. And for us to access that, remember we have our route in here, is listening in the API slash listings. API because of this here. That is where I'm listing that. And then in the routes, it's slash listings. Remember that we have been testing it here in slash listings. And in the front end, if you want to get that, you can do an asynchronous request. And for making that asynchronous request, we use an API called fetch. And I'm going to say, please just get me the listings. Okay. Then basically, if I do that, usually what you want to do, like you can do that with promises, fetch returns a promise. So one thing that you could do is just go and say then and then do something with that. But for the class, I do recommend you to use the await interface, which sugar codes the synchronicity of it and makes it look like synchronous. But in order for us to do that, as you can see, Slanding here is complaining, you cannot have the await operator in a function that is not asynchronous. So this one is telling me here, you should have a function that is asynchronous. So I'm going to put an asynchronous function here. Now, having done that, then what I'm going to say is check if there is an error in there. This is going to print it in the console, but let me go and say, um, um, actually, um, think I can go ahead and put it like in the main document. Yeah, I like that. Get elements by tag name and then fail to load the listings. Thank you, Copilot. Perfect. That works perfect. Okay. So the next thing I need to do, so basically what this is saying, if there is an error, then this is going to show a message in there. Um, like you could go and put it as an alert if you want, like get bootstrap and then alert. Oh, I wonder if this will show in here. Like, this is another trick that you can use for kind of like semi-vibe coding, is you can say, show an error using bootstrap alert. And then let's see if I remove this one. Now that I gave it like an instruction, will it do it? Come on. And then of course, oh, maybe it's because, oh, I do have an error. So let's clear up this thing. And then what about now? No, come on, not that. In the main tag. There we go. Yes. Oh, a little bit too long. So we can, this seems interesting. Blah, 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 blah. Yes. So actually, if we are going to do it that way, well, in that case, um, show error, and then this could have a message in here, and then this will be doing that, and then um, message, and I could also have, let's go and say the message and the response. Okay. And this could be my message, okay? And the other one that I could have is that my default role is going to be like an alert. And I'm also going to equal this to empty. So in case I don't pass anything, that's going to be the default value. And this is going to be like the role. And in this case, I could also use, oh, no. So this one, I'm going to call it in here type. And instead of being alert, I want it to be danger. And this is going to be the type. And then the default value is going to be like no message. And then this is going to be the type. And then what's your problem? I forgot this is your problem. I forgot this. So actually, you should receive one of these and also the rest. Basically, this format that I'm doing in here is whenever you want to destructure things and it helps me. Good, perfect. Thank you, Copilot. That's nice. And then the type is going to be danger. Perfect. Okay. So now that I have done that, this is going to get the resource. Okay. This is going to get the resource. But then, as Copilot is telling us, like you then need to parse it. So what I'm going to do in there is that I'm going to parse the data and you do another wait for that. And then you can just go and show the listings. And I like exactly what Copilot is suggesting in there is that I'm going to look into my document for the listings. Okay. And probably not these. Yeah, let's go with these for the moment, and then we can fight with Copilot for that. So if I do this one, this is the data endpoint. But then if I come in here, um, I am not calling that yet. So I need to do like refresh listings. And if I do that, then I get an error fetching the listings. And then very important is not ACPI, but API. And then I do that, and now I can see that it actually returned the listings. And here, oh, yes, you can see that it has a list of listings, and this is the list. Okay, so in the backend, here on the routes, here are the listings. Let me see if Copilot will give me another one. Yes, perfect, beautiful. Thank you very much. And that's it. So at least I could have two of those. Beautiful. So then if I refresh in here, now you can see we have two listings. Then finally, the only thing I want to do next, like I'm going to do that very quickly for the moment. You can see these are going to be my listings. Um, let's actually add this thing in here. Oh, that's probably why I was trying to do that in there. And true, I can have here my listings there. And then true, I can come in here and then in my front end, basically now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get the element by ID. That looks better. And actually, that's nice. I like what you're doing in there. Copilot is going to do that. And then in the HTML, it can create. Oh, this is just for the photos. You're overcomplicated that thing. Yeah, I don't need that. And then just let's go for the moment. And I'm just going to put in there like a basic div. And then for the moment, just for simplicity, like you can play with the rest of it later, I'm just going to take in there like the title and then the address and the price. Okay. And for each one of these listings, I need to have a title and and an address and a price. Okay. So let's actually make extract these from here. And then Copilot might be making this hard to understand, but hopefully you're still catching up. Um, I'm going to say render listings, probably. Uh, render listings, and then yes, I guess. And then I can do that. and I can close this in here, and then I can call in here render listings, pass in the data dot listings. I like that. And then let's call this just that because I don't want to export it yet. And then I do this one. And yes. Oh, well, I already had it in there. But whatever. And then I'm going to say, let's do it with a for actually. For const listing of listings, and then we do this one. So actually, I'm going to be expanding it like this, expanding it rather, and then that. Okay. Sorry, too much code, too fast. So, and then for each one of these, I am going to append in that card. So basically, this one, what this render listings does is that it's supposed to get an array. That array is going to select the listings div. And then from there, it's just going to iterate over all of the listings. You can do it with functions, as Copilot was suggesting, and then just append these basic elements in here. So let's see if that works. So I can do that. Yeah, it's perfect. So now we have the two elements. So what is happening in there is like, and I apologize for all of the rudeness. So we are just implementing the Ajax. So what happens is that we have the node express. So let's go step by step. First, like I go and I opened, like on this one, I opened 3000. And since I'm opening 3000 is the default resource. So because it is the default resource, this gets that. The Express server looks at that and then says, do I have a static resource to serve that? Since I'm just requesting a slash, then it's going to return the index HTML. This is my index HTML, which contains some JavaScript and CSS file, which is going to be generating these ones. It's going to create a request for the CSS. It is actually going to make a request to the Bootstrap, to the CDN to get Bootstrap for the CSS and the JavaScript. And finally, it is going to request like here. It is going to ask for my front end code, okay, which is this JavaScript file. Now that JavaScript file has this thing here, and it's just initializing this and calling refresh listings. And what refresh listings does is that initiates a fetch call. And that fetch call, it is looking for the API listings, which is what we have in here. That comes back here to the server. And in the server, and by the way, that's what we call Ajax. That is the beginning of the Ajax part of the code. So that makes a request, an asynchronous request to the server. The server looks at that and then it finds an API listing. So the server, which is this one, is going to say, is it a static thing? No. Is it under API? Yes, it is under API. So then it looks at this one. So if I go and I take a look at this, then it's coming here. Oh yeah, I have a route for that. So in that route, it's going to print this. You can see that printed hopefully here. So it prints this, and then it returns a list of listings, which is this one. Later, we are going to get that from Mongo. And then we have two listings. So now the listings go back from here, go back to the client. And in the client, they are going to come back in here. So first it checks, is the request okay? So if the request is not okay, it should show an error. But if the request is okay, then it's going to try to parse it as JSON. And then it's going to call the render listings function that using the DOM will just render the thing on the browser. And that is the final part of the Ajax because it's Ajax, it's an asynchronous request, then getting some data endpoints. Then once it gets that, it will render that on the screen. And that's what's happening in there. So for the next video, I think what I'm going to do is just to try to create like a very basic Mongo application and then, or Mongo database. And then from a collection in that Mongo database, I'm going to get the listings, like even those two listings that we have in there, and then return those from Mongo to Express so we can pass those to the client front end.